Okay, Naila, you're live.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Okay, here we are, session 1. I am pleased again to introduce Cheryl Barbato, CEO and co-founder of Talent Retriever. She will be having a fireside chat with Joe Deal, CHRO over at LogMeIn. And Cheryl, I feel like I said she's the co-founder and she's co-founder and CEO of Talent Retriever. Sorry if I misspoke. Cheryl, I'll give it over to you.
Thank you, Naila. I'm really, really excited to talk with Jo today. Her and I did have a chance to talk a little bit last week, and I read a few articles and interviews with her. I encourage you guys all to go out and do that. So today we're going to be talking about leading with empathy, which I think is a big part of the CHRO shift. So when I think about empathy, I think about thinking in the shoes of others. And combining empathy with good judgment and confidence, you know, it really is possible to be empathetic with those other qualities and become an executive who's listened to and has a seat at the table. So I'm really excited for Jo to share her insight today, and we'll go through a bunch of questions. But Jo, if you could kind of set the stage, you know, rather than saying why is empathy so important, which I think is kind of obvious today for where we are, maybe just share a little bit of a high-level overview on your thoughts that help set the discussion for today.
Sure. So look, I think empathy is probably more important than ever, but many of the characteristics that are important right now, they were important before, right? If we think about the characteristics of a leader that inspires us, it's not just, you know, good business and operating practice, it's EQ and understanding their people and adjusting a little bit so that it's not one size fits all on how you work with your team and get the best out of them. And I think, you know, the leadership training and development that we're encouraging, and my job as CHRO to work with my team to put these programs in place. Yes, it's changed, and COVID has certainly changed some things permanently as we think about work, but the underlying tendencies, I think, were ones that we'd already worked on. And then the underlying role of the CHRO, yes, empathy is important, data is important, agility is important, thinking about the business is important. Those things in themselves haven't changed, but maybe how we're applying them, or even this opportunity, I think, where HR, if you weren't in the spotlight, I'm pretty sure COVID put you in the spotlight, HR and IT. So there's a moment to perhaps bring more of that out than you maybe had a chance to do before.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I'm looking forward to hearing are really part of even your personal stories and how you use really being human as an example of how to do that, which I'm a huge believer in as well, and showing vulnerability, which I think helps bring people on board. But before we get there, I guess just to kind of jump in, how do you get, and sort of starting with the high level question, maybe we'll have to readdress this, how do you get other leaders in the company on board with this? You know, what if they aren't, you know, don't have a tendency to be empathetic? Are there subtle things to show buy-in and participation? So one of the things I noticed in your signatures at your company, it feels really personal. So could you just kind of talk about that? And those that probably haven't seen it, and great.
Sure. So everybody at LogMeIn, and this was pre-COVID, so this was probably a year and a half ago, we launched, you remember the ice bucket challenge that went viral? So we launched a signature challenge, and we used Slack, where you sort of changed your signature and then tagged 3 other people to do it. But it was really around our desire to have people bring their whole self to work. And so you'll see on LogMeIn signatures, mine talks about first, you know, I'm a mum, I'm juggling, like we all are. I like juggling life, I like reading, I like travel. I took that one off lately because I do still like travel, but that's off the table for a little while. So everybody's signature is, you know, I'm a Cowboys fan, I'm a Chelsea football team, whatever it is. And it went viral, and within days, people across the whole company have started changing their signatures. And it's just been a really nice way to connect with other people. And you'll notice the last thing in anybody's signature is what they do for a living, their professional self. Because I just do think it's important to create, you know, we just heard a lot of great insights on a culture of diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And if you can't be yourself, I mean, I just think it's hard. It's hard if you can't bring your whole self to work. And so this was just a small step to encourage it. And I think, you know, I saw some leaders be slower to adapt, slower to put that personal self out there. And some of them are very short and abrupt. And it says, you know, golf and finance person. Or, okay, but that's a step for them, and we've got to meet people where they are. So I think little things like that and trying to make it fun. The other thing that we've done is we've said to people, look, you've got to take breaks during the day right now. We're all juggling. We're all, whether it's pets at home, caring for other people, roommates, or children. And as a mother of two, I know that I have to take breaks sometimes. I had to cancel a meeting yesterday because my son just went into an epic meltdown. And so we use Slack for that. And then we also say to people, just put a quick Slack update saying, I'm going to go and do the laundry for 15 minutes. I'm going to walk around the block. Whatever it is you're going to do, but it's okay to take a break, and we encourage you to put it there. And one thing I said to some of the leaders is we also need to do it, because sometimes it's great to say to people, oh, I don't mind if you do that, but that's not the same as seeing a leader do it and going, oh, well, then it really is okay. So I think that's how you get the authenticity out there, is I'm not just telling you to do it, I'm doing it myself too.
Right. I love that. It's almost, they're giving others permission to be by doing it themselves. And I think setting those examples are huge. And, during, I think, this period, you try to take what were the good things that are coming out of it. And, we at Talent Retriever as a company started, and some people have participated in the Sunny Side of Life challenge, and everybody's down. And it was the point where it had gotten so just, it was dreary weather, and we were starting to come out of it and be springtime. And, just talk about, okay, what's been something good you've gotten? And, it spread for a couple of weeks, so, 2 or 3 weeks. And it was really awesome to just see positivity. And I think it just made people think about, okay, here's how professionally I've changed or personally I've changed. So it was really nice to see that, and hopefully that continues. Yeah. It's just made a shift for everybody.
Right.
So great. And I think seeing that vulnerability of people hopefully sets a great example moving forward. So you had mentioned a little bit in the beginning, kind of being, about data, being agile and adapting. So if we could talk about the data for a minute, given your success as an empathetic leader, and I'm kind of a high empathetic person as well, I believe your gut probably serves you well, but I love the fact that you get the data to back it up as part of your process. So could you talk a little bit about what kind of surveying you do of your employees to gather data, how often? And then, when I look at surveying, I always think that if you're going to do a survey, you've got to be ready to respond.
Absolutely.
Do a survey and do nothing. You've got to address it. So don't ask questions that you're not ready to respond to and make a change with. So could you just kind of talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I think, again, sort of COVID aside and this whole situation aside, data-driven leaders, especially in HR, right? It's kind of it's a little bit of a soft and fluffy, grey, subjective, unpredictable human being situation that we're working in. So the more that you can bring data, and yes, my gut's good, but I worked for a CEO a long time ago who came from an engineering background, and he didn't go off gut. So I think my milestone of success was after maybe 3 years when I said, "Look, can you just trust me, trust my gut on this one?" And he did. But I'd spent 3 years using data to prove that I, knew what I was talking about and back up the suggestions. So we did very early on. We did a survey and just simple questions, because everyone was busy, and it was sort of acknowledging that. But how are you doing? And it was what do you need? Very much in the moment focused. And we took a lot of actions after that. But before we went into that survey, one of the things we did was just sort of sit and think about, everybody's in a very different situation. So when you're trying to come up with the answers, probably not one size fits all. I mean, we're a global company, 15 countries. So even how we pivoted people to remote was very different for Guatemala, for India, for our team in Boston. So we'd already come in knowing we needed to sort of get cleverer than just ask everybody a question and then come out with one answer. So somebody in the Change Ops team we have had suggested trying to identify your working persona. So I've got school-age kids. There's people with young children at home who are maybe on a nap time, or I can only imagine, right, if you're just coming off that shelter. People with roommates fighting for bandwidth, fighting for space around the kitchen table. They don't have a desk at home. So we, in a survey, you sort of say which geography you're in, with demographic stuff up front. We inserted that, and we did a little bit of, we talked about here are these personas. Maybe you identify with more than one, but when you answer, think about that because that will help us. So going in and to the first survey, we had that, and so we could slice the data based on, some people that they just need a chair, they're using the kitchen table and chair. Other people need flexibility because they've got children. So it helped us then customize some of our answers. We early on realized just everybody, in the beginning, I think nobody realized how long this was going to go on. So I think we were all solving for a race, and we had that adrenaline of, we're at home and the kids, and there was a little bit of adrenaline fueled action. This has become a marathon, if not an ultra marathon. And so you can't sprint for 26 or 52 miles. So that's one where we kind of realized that and adjusted. We asked everybody, just take a day off, have an extra day of vacation, take it off. This was back in April or March, even April. And then back to the kind of adjust and learn point we were talking about. It was nice to have a day off, but everyone else was working. And if you're already feeling overwhelmed and behind, then you come back from your day off and you're even more behind. So we learned from that. And ever since then, once a month, the company has a shutdown day. Everybody that can, not if you're in customer support, you pick a different day. But it means that you take that day and your inbox is not filling up with work. Everybody's off at the same time. And so it was better. And we call it a self-care day. So those are the things that our surveys have taught us from what people have said. And so we've acted very quickly on them. Some things we got right, some things we had to change. And then we've kept surveying to sort of as the situation's changed. And now we're thinking about beyond COVID and this future of work, and do we even want to come back to an office 5 days a week? And we've shifted a little bit more and more asking that. We get very good response rate, to your point, because we've followed up on what we asked and what people told us, and we've been transparent about we can't fix that, but we can try this.
Right. Yeah, it's excellent. And, as much as a company like LogMeIn that, everybody knows has a wonderful office environment and just great, exciting, fun things, it's nice to just be recognizing personally what, individuals are looking for. And, I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit to something I wanted to talk about, but since we're kind of on it I think a lot of people, especially HR leaders, are thinking about their companies moving forward into back to school season. And although there are different personas, and even with those with children going back to school, it varies not only with the ages of the kids, but what is the situation going to be? Because it feels, not only stressful for those that are an HR leader in that situation, but them thinking about their companies and how that's going to affect it. So have you given thought to that? How are you going to deal with that? Because it's taxing in so many ways on the business, emotionally, mentally, family. Just would love to get some insight.
Yeah, I mean, it's as a working mother of two, I think about it all the time, and I've hit my breaking point a number of times. It's just trying to manage just everything. It's a lot. And so as back to schools, and certainly in the US, I mean, I think we've got employees in other countries where schools are back. They went back before the summer break, and they will be going back. And I think I've just moved from Massachusetts to California. I think different states have different ability to deliver good remote learning versus, we're still figuring it out. And then that burden falls on the parents. We've done some listening groups with our parents. We've asked them, what would be helpful? What do you want? We have a resource group where often it's therapy actually that people want. Let's just come together and go, oh my God, let me just tell you what just happened in my house. And then, I feel better because that's happening in mine too. We're looking at, are there options where we could support with a Bright Horizons or a care.com membership, something to help people get back up. But I think the biggest thing, and this is partly HR, but it's mostly leadership, is empathy and flexibility. I understand, and let's figure something out, and let me adjust other schedules so that we can maybe not have our team meeting at that time, or because you're about to try and get your kids on a Zoom call to start their morning meeting of the day, or you need a break to make sure you've checked in that they've done the work they've done. I mean, I think if you talk to parents, our kids are pretty creative at the excuses they come up with for why they had to drop off this call or not get that piece of work done. I feel like I'm tech support at home. I'm a camp counselor. I'm a teacher, and so it's hard. I don't think there is a great answer. I think everybody's on a different spectrum of whether they want their kids to go back to school, whether they can, whether they're opting to say it's not safe. And I think there's no wrong answer here. We just got to figure it out. The biggest concern I think that's happened generally is performance, and guilt. I'm not as productive as I was. I feel guilty. I'm not a great parent. I'm not a great worker. I'm not a great anything. But then also, at what point will the company, and we've heard that recently, and we've been very as flexible as we can with people, but people are like, well, how long will you carry on being flexible with me if I'm not able to give 100%? And it came up in the mid-year performance discussions and bonuses discussions, because of course it's important.
Right. So they're struggling internally to get feeling that way. It will be an interesting time, but this is where the leading with empathy, I think, is just going to be so key right now. And it's not leading with sympathy, it's leading with empathy, where there's a big difference there to keep in mind. One thing, you talk about being agile, which I'm a huge believer in being agile, trying things, testing it doesn't work, try something else, and continuing to make advancements, which I think is great. You mentioned about try, fail, try again, fail. Stories you can share on that, anything that, maybe you kind of shared a little bit of that along the way, but anything that stands out in your mind where that's been working particularly well from an HR perspective? Because I know we talk about it in technology, which I'm sure that plenty of that agile happens at the company in general, but.
We actually, within my team, we have our own little hashtag of like Agile HR, because we try and adopt that. I think so many things that work in the business, we assume they're in the business, and I'm saying the business is separate to HR, which I don't believe, but Agile and data and all of these things can work for us too. This is going off this topic a little bit, but we just launched a new engagement survey platform, and it's fantastic, and it's real time, and it's the minute the deadline's done, you can go in and you can see all the results. And we were so excited by that we sort of said to managers, oh, it's done, you can go in, you can take a look. The training will be on Wednesday, but on Monday, you've got people saying, well, I'm going in, I need help, or I can see that. And so there was a quick lesson. I was talking to my head of HR operations. She's like, next time, just because we can, let's give ourselves a few days, because it was a new tool for us too. Let's get familiar. So there's a learning we've noted. We're quite good at doing postmortems after things, after big projects, M&A, whatever it might be, and saying, what could we do better? And do it in the moment. Otherwise, you think, oh, I'll get to that. And then you forget. By the time you get around to it, you forget those moments where you were like, oh. So I think that's just a habit to build in. And the key thing, I think, to be able to do it well is to sort of give permission to almost encourage mistakes.
Right.
I do think mistakes are where you learn. Success is where you sort of think, oh, well done, and off we go again. Mistakes are where you sit and think, oh my gosh, what did we miss? What did we not do? And you don't want to get into beating yourself up, but you do want to sort of have a safe place where you can acknowledge what could be done better and then document it so that you can capture it.
Exactly. And I like, the fact that you are transparent about it, because I think it could be easy to build something up and everybody's expecting, and then it doesn't work. Like, well, then they lose faith in you. So I think being transparent, we're going to try this, see how it goes. They see, because progress does actually get made that way. So where this agile approach is so much part of the culture, kind of across the board, from a hiring perspective, do you make that part of your interview process, kind of the try, fail, try aspect? Does that, drive any of the hiring decisions? Is that anything that you've incorporated there?
Yeah, it's not called that exactly, but it's one of our values. So we have values around thriving together and teamwork, and we're very much a we, not I company, and challenging the status quo and trying to innovate, do better, active listening. Those sort of form the behaviors, if you like, that sit underneath our values. We have always tried to hire for cultural fits, and it's something that, again, back to that. I mean, I'm a big believer in there's what you do, but how you do it is so important for people to want to work with you, follow you as a leader, you as a co-worker. And so we've always tried to build the how as well as the what into our interview process. We've talked about our values. We've trained people to interview against them, and we have sort of behavioral statements so you can dig in. It's interesting, just again, quite off topic for a minute, but when you do acquisitions, that's always the harder thing to, you're buying some great technology or But what about the cultural fit? And that's often the reason acquisitions don't succeed. So we've tried to take some of that and build it in when we're doing diligence on an acquisition. So it's not just in hiring, but we do have it in hiring. And at our more senior level roles, we have a very robust program, high potential up and coming leaders, and train them in, and they do a 90-minute assessment purely against that cultural fit, not about, then it's maybe an engineer interviewing a marketing person. So it's not about functional technical skills. It's about, can you flourish in this organization? Right. Are you somebody who's okay? And those questions are, how do you deal with failure? How do you tell me about a time when, to really dig into that? Because I do think it's important. And you say it's the, sort of back to what we've been saying earlier, is that if I show that I'm human, I can make mistakes. I did, in fact, make a mistake. You've got to be okay with sharing that, to give others permission to say, oh, it's all right here to do it, versus them just saying it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you just touched on it, and I know we don't have too much time left, but, I am a big believer in core values that are actually lived, and people talk about it and they are incorporated into the everyday and your hiring and your review process, whatever that may be. So I love the fact that you, kind of mentioned that. In regard to, sort of being vulnerable, we can see here, you've already shared a couple of stories that, you can't be afraid to share that and be transparent about yourself. And, you have talked about, I think you had mentioned you've created your own memes or something to share when you're going to walk your dog, or, just quick doing laundry or whatever, that, don't be ashamed of the fact that I have a life to live because I'm, going to cut off. As a matter of fact, I talked with somebody last week, or a couple people. I had seen just a quick photo that said, this is our, end of the day cutoff time. And it was, a couple, and one of them was pouring lemonade with strawberries. Yeah. You have to just have a point that they cut it off each day, because it's so easy for it just to drift into night and hours. Right. With this vulnerability and kind of leading with empathy, and when you look at your numbers, can you see, when you look at kind of employee satisfaction, attrition, referrals that are driven to the company for other employees, what does that look like? Can you see an effect that has had, or maybe since you've implemented any changes?
Yeah, I think it's hard. It's hard right now to you can measure things, but what's your baseline? Because we've never been through this before. Right. So, our attrition's great, but nobody wants to leave right now because of completely other economic factors, versus LogMeIn's a great place to be. So I don't want to sort of, because our turnover is down. I think the best way to measure it is there's a little bit of, checking with your team and how are people doing, and people seem okay. There's obviously sales productivity. As a company, we enable remote work. So not unexpectedly, this has produced, boom in interest. So productivity's up. Again, I don't know that that's because everybody's working from home or because of COVID situation. I think the engagement survey, as I mentioned, we've just run one, we've just closed it. So we've always done EMPS. So that's a simple question. Would you recommend LogMeIn as a place to work? And that's nice, but I like more questions. You can get more data to work with. So, but our EMPS is up, and people, in the surveys and in the commentary, people have said, I appreciate the self-care days. I appreciate the flexibility. So you've got that sort of quantitative and qualitative data to tell you it's working or it's not working, and these are the things we need to adjust. So yes, I think it's worked. I think for me, the trick now is, everything's been about kind of COVID and this pandemic, but we're not going back to what it was afterwards. Right. I think everybody will be more remote. People won't be in the office so much. So how can we take the learnings from this? And in a post-COVID time when there's a vaccine and people feel comfortable socializing and traveling, then what do they want from work, and what do they want from kind of the work-life balance and the commuting, and taking that learning and applying it to that so that we can continue to have good engagement, because there's surviving this, and then there's sort of engaging and thriving again, which is obviously everyone's ultimate goal.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So just this has been great, Joe. I could talk to you for hours, which I wish we could. But that's it for today. But maybe we can do something again soon if you would be willing to do that. And in closing, everyone here is here to learn and educate themselves. I am fortunate to get to partner with Mass TLC quite often, and I know people always have lots of questions. So maybe if you could just share a recent, book you've read or speaker you've heard, a TED Talk, something that you thought would be a good kind of takeaway beyond the things that we're going to offer to the group to read afterwards that LogMeIn has put out, which is wonderful. Anything you might share and say, hey, check this out.
I think, to be honest, I don't really have time to do a lot of reading of a whole book right now because, life. But podcasts are good where you can take your kids out for a walk. I think I'm a big fan of David Rock and the Neuroleadership Institute. It's a lot about the science of the brain. And their work applies in, pre-COVID, we talk about giving performance feedback and D&I, lots of interesting data there. But then there also, how does your brain function in a pandemic, in a crisis? And so understanding that, there's some good podcasts, there's some good just short articles, a page or two. So I'd encourage people to look Neuroleadership Institute. And then I follow David Rock on Twitter, so I can kind of keep up to speed with the short nuggets there. But again, it's data and science behind what we're trying to do. So really useful. Yeah,
that's great. And for those that have trouble reading a whole book, Blinkist is something good to check out where you can get short versions of books. You can listen to them. But Joe, thank you so much. Wonderful. And I can't wait till we could reconnect and do this again soon. Nayla, if we could do that, that would be great. So appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much, Joe. It's been a great talking with you.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for your time. And I got to tell you, I loved hearing about the human side of your, how you lead. Thanks for all your time and all your preparation. And I'm going to take a minute to say for all of you all listening out there, give us 1 minute while we prepare the next session and bring them in. Thank you.